Want your hand knit sweaters to look polished and professional? In today's tutorial, I'll show you how to create an invisible shoulder seam using the 3 needle bind off. It's sturdy, seamless, and easy to do. Now, if you are knitting a bottom-up sweater and you have completed your shoulder panels and now you need to seam together the top of your shoulders, you might want to consider using the 3 needle bind off. It creates a beautiful invisible shoulder seam that is just very simple to use. So here I've completed the left shoulder. I need to work on the right shoulder. I just finished knitting this front one. And this back shoulder panel I knitted previously, and instead of binding off, I put those stitches onto some scrap yarn so we can use those live stitches along with the live stitches on the front shoulder panel so we can bind them off together, creating this invisible seam. Now, if you want this invisible seam, you're going to want to make sure that your right sides of your fabric are facing together. If you have them like this with the wrong sides facing together, you're going to see on the outside of your sweater this bind off edge. Now that might be a look that you're going for. If you like that look, then make sure that your wrong sides are facing together. Me, I'm going to use an invisible bind off, so I want to have my right sides facing together. So to do that, I need to turn my sweater completely inside out. Okay, now that I have my shoulder panels with the right sides facing together, I can position my needles and my working yarn to begin to do my bind off. Now I've got my working yarn coming off of my back shoulder panel, so I'm going to need to also put my needle tip also to that side on the back panel, and now I can move these live stitches from the scrap yarn onto the other tip of my needle so that both tips are facing to the right. So let's just transfer these stitches off of my scrap yarn onto the other end of my long circular needle. You can simply remove your scrap yarn. And now I've got both sets of these stitches from the top of my shoulder panels onto my needles with the tips both pointing to the right, and that is also where my working yarn is. So now we're going to need a third needle. That's why it's called a 3 needle bind off. And what we're going to do is we're going to bind off each of these stitches together, the front and the back stitches one by one together till we have them all bound off. So here's how we're going to do that. The working yarn is coming off my back needle, so I'm going to leave it in the back here. And with my third needle, I am going to insert it into this first stitch like we're going to knit it, and also through that back, the stitch on the back needle like we're going to knit it. And then we're going to knit those two together. So wrap your working yarn around your needle and knit it through that back stitch and that front stitch together. And then you can slip both of those stitches off your needle. Okay, so we've just knitted one stitch. Now I'm going to do that same thing with a second stitch. Insert it through the first stitch and the back stitch. Knit those two together. If you need to do it one stitch at a time, you can, or just do them two together. And we'll slip those stitches off the needle. So now that I've got 2 stitches on my third needle, I'm going to pass this first stitch over the second stitch. So I like to just use this back needle to assist with that by just catching that first stitch and passing it over the second stitch on the needle. So now I've bounded off 1 stitch. Now let's do the same thing with the next stitch. We're going to insert our needle into both of those stitches like we're going to knit them, and knit those 2 together. Slide those stitches off the needle, and now take that back needle, grab that first stitch and pass it over the second stitch. Okay, let's do it a couple more times. Insert needle into both those stitches, knit those 2 together, slide those stitches off the needle, pass that first stitch over the second stitch. Okay, so we're going to do that all the way to the end, and I'll show you how it looks. All right, I just bound off my last stitch here. So now I can just simply pull the stitch out a little bit and cut off my yarn, pull the stitch through, and there you have your completed bind off. So the wrong side of my sweater now has the bound off edge here, but on my right side, it's a beautiful, smooth, invisible edge for your shoulder seam. If you'd like to see the finished sweater and get the link to the pattern for this completed sweater, I will have a link in the description below for that pattern. Feel free to click on that, follow along to make this beautiful sweater along with me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Happy knitting.